Hi, welcome to beading tutorial number 6, raised beading techniques. In this tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate 3 different raised beading techniques. For this tutorial, you will need your beads, needle and thread, scissors, FlexiFirm, and a Sharpie. For the first pattern, we'll look at how to do a raised leaf. So I have my green bead color here, and I have my piece of FlexiFirm. I've taken my Sharpie and I've just hand drawn a little design on there. You can draw any shape, any size of leaf that you'd like. So I'll do another little sketch of the leaf. Adding the line in the middle of the leaf helps with our beading later on. So to begin, I'm going to thread my needle and I'm going to double thread. So I've taken about 1 meter of thread and I've tied the ends together to make that double thread. To start, I'm going to bring my needle up at the base of that leaf. This stitch is different from the flat stitch. We're going to make sure that we pucker the beads, and the way that we do that is we put on more than we think we need. So I've put on 7 of those beads. After I've put on my 7 beads, I'm going to bring them down to my pattern. And the way that I pucker them is instead of putting my needle down here, which would make them lay flat, I'm going to put my needle down around here, which is almost halfway. And when you pull your thread, you'll see that you have a little pucker of beads there. So now I'm going to go over to the other side and I'm going to repeat. I've put on 7 beads again so that those beads pucker up. I'm going to move over to the other side of my leaf. And I'm going to repeat that. And I'm going to make my way to the top of the leaf. I'm using size 11 beads. This stitch also works really well with size 8 beads. So if you want to try with size 8 beads, that looks really nice too. A little bit more. I'm going to continue up the leaf, and as the leaf gets smaller, I'm going to put on less and less beads. Now you can see how I'm not counting so much of how many beads I'm putting on. It's more of looking at it and saying, oh, okay, that looks like that's enough beads. Or I'm going to put a little bit more on. I'm going to continue working up to the top of the leaf. I'm just going to turn it sideways, and you can see how raised those beads are. And you'll see when I complete the stitch how the finished leaf will look. So now that we've finished the leaf, you'll see that it is nice and raised. And for the last stitch, I just put one stitch at the very point, and then at the back you can see the stitching. And there, we've completed our raised leaf. The next stitch that I'm going to demonstrate is going to be the vine stitch. So if you take your needle and you come up at the base of the leaf, I'm going to put 6 beads on. I'm going to bring those 6 beads all the way down to my beadwork. And I'm going to lay them just a bit offset from where the pen markings are. I'm now going to take my needle, and instead of going down through here to make them flat, I'm going to put my needle down through about half. And that is my first part, my first stitch of the vine. My next stitch, I'm going to bring my needle up around halfway of where that first arch is. I'm going to bring my beads all the way down to my beadwork again, and placing a bit offset from the line, I'm going to place my needle down about halfway and pull it tight. I'm going to repeat that, so coming up about halfway, and you'll see that it's beginning to form what looks like a rope or a vine, right? A vine to the leaves and to the flowers. I'm going to keep beading, and when I come back, I'll show you what it looks like when it's all complete. So when you finish both sides of your vines, this is what it will look like. If you turn it sideways, you can see that it's nicely raised, and you have your beautiful completed vine stitch. The last stitch I'll demonstrate will be how to create a raised petal. Before you get started, you're going to use the flat stitch technique to bead the center of your flower as well as the outline of the petal. Please see video tutorial number 2 to see how to do the flat stitch. To begin, I'm going to use my Sharpie, and I'm going to draw my center line very lightly. I can also do it for the other petals as well. I'm also going to draw 2 other lines along this inside of both halves of the petal. using the flat stitch technique, I'm going to bead along those two lines. After I finish beading those two lines, I'm going to begin with the raised beading. So these two lines are going to be underneath the light pink beads. And what we're going to do is we're going to pile beads over these two lines. And these are what is going to help to raise those petals. So we're going to start by putting 14 beads on. And it looks like that is enough. So I'm going to place these 4 beads at an angle within the flower, that first petal. So now I'm going to go back again to the base of the flower, and I'm going to put on maybe 13 beads, and we'll see how that fits. Okay. So I'm going to fill this space now. So we've done our first little raise over, and now we're going to fill in the space before it. So I think that might be a little too much. I'm going to take 1 bead off and see how that fits. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now, where I'm going to start my next stitch is going to be a little bit up from the base of the flower, but still on the center line. Now, right now, I'm just eyeing out how many beads. So that looks like that'll fit on there. You can see how it's starting to raise and pile on. And those first lines that we beaded onto the petal are now being covered. Put 1 more on. Okay. That looks great. I'm going to continue to move up the center line. Couple more stitches and we'll be finished the first half of the petal. Okay, I am going to do 1 more stitch. I'm not going to go all the way to the top just yet. Okay. So you see from the first half of the petal that you got a nice little raise there in your petal. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side, doing the exact same stitch, and then I will show you how to finish off the top of the flower. So now that we have both sides of our petal finished, we can see that they are nice and raised. To finish off, there's a little triangle at the top that you have to fill in. What I do is I usually come up in the middle of that triangle. I put on a few beads. and then I fill in both sides beside that line. And there you have your completed petal, and you're well on your way to having a fully beaded flower. I hope you've enjoyed these raised beading techniques. Thank you so much for joining in.